Bueno, bienvenidos a todos. Vamos a tener ahora una sesión en inglés. So I'm gonna speak in English. Welcome everybody and welcome our panelists. We have a really high level panel today. We have people from 5 different continents. All of them have a lot of experience in community-based tourism and indigenous tourism, and they will share their views on regarding their experiences and how they are living this situation. So I'm gonna leave the floor to Aurélie. Aurélie is the representative of the World Indigenous Tourism Alliance in Europe, and she will be the moderator of this session. So Aurélie, you can start this session, which we're sure will be really interesting for our audience as well.
Thank you very much, Pablo, and I wanted to give a special thanks to the co-travel team for organizing this online event. Thank you to the interpreters also for the great support for the translation in Spanish. And of course, our 5 speakers who will share their views on community-based tourism according to their own territory, traditional land, or indigenous ancestral lands. Our speakers embody diversity in indigenous and local communities, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome them, especially in this very difficult situation that we are living at the moment regarding tourism. So first I would like to introduce Annina Sandberg. Annina is the CEO of Visit Natives, which is a tour operator based in Finland and working with Maasai Hadzabe in Tanzania and Sami people in Norway. We also have Peter Richards, who is a consultant at International Trade Center between UK and Myanmar. Welcome, Peter. We also have Judy Kefrakona, who is the director and senior consultant of Sustainable Travel and Tourism Agenda. Welcome with us, Judy. Then we'll welcome Robert Taylor. Robert is the director of the Western Australian Indigenous Tourism Operators Council. And at least we have Keith Henry, and Keith is the CEO of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. So welcome, Robert and Keith. Welcome to this panel. So we are going to explore what is community-based tourism in the reality of in the countries of all of our speakers, and we are going to explore 4 subtopics, which are what kind of projects and recent projects our speakers were involved in community-based tourism. Then we will explore what are the challenges that they have encountered and are still encountering regarding this kind of tourism in their territories, and how they are contributing to support local communities. Then we will explore what kind of lessons our speakers have learned according to their perspectives and their reality in community-based tourism. And then at least we'll also get their vision and how we can go through the new challenges, find maybe new strategies, and find maybe new way to commit better to indigenous and local communities through community-based tourism in their country, traditional lands, and the world. So to start, we are going to explore the first topic, which is, and I will give the floor to Annina Sandberg to start, and then welcome all the speakers to follow and answer the question. So could you please, Annina, introduce your organization, explain what you're doing, and maybe give us a glimpse of what are the most recent projects that you are involved yourself and Visit Natives in community-based tourism.
Okay, hello for everybody. My name is Annina Sandberg, and I'm the founder of Visit Natives. And I'm from Finland, but we run tours in Tanzania and Norway. And at the moment, I'm in Tanzania doing some fieldwork. So I have a little bit low internet connection. So sorry if I don't hear well, but let's try to have a good connection. So what Visit Natives does, we want to do tourism that benefits indigenous people. And we work in Norway and Tanzania. And these places are, there's lots of tourism because they're the lands of the indigenous people. But the problem is that they are not benefiting the indigenous people. So what we do, we bring travelers to stay with the indigenous families and communities. And in Norway, we work with Sami reindeer herders. And they are the only indigenous people in the European Union. And we bring their people to, for example, to join the reindeer migration. They join the Sami families and they explore Norway very differently. And in Tanzania, we work with Maasai and Datoga pastoralists near the Ngorongoro area, where is lots of tourism that is not benefiting them. And also we work with Hadzabe hunter-gatherers. So we bring travelers there to stay in their own communities. And they stay in the families, they do the daily work of the people and get very, very immersive experience.
Very good. Thank you, Annina. That's a pleasure to have you with us today. So I'm very happy that you can share your views on and your work also on the field. Peter, can you please give us a glimpse of your own work, what you are doing and what kind of projects you're involved?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, just to say, I absolutely love to go on a trip to Sami communities. That sounds unbelievably interesting. So yeah, when COVID's finished, that's on the list. My name's Peter Richards, and I have about 20 years of experience at the crossroads of responsible tourism and community development. And what I'm passionate about is facilitating partnerships between different tourism stakeholders, especially communities and tour guides and tour operators, to basically create great local experiences which create real local benefits. The work is really about helping partners to understand and to balance each other's situations and expectations and positions. And quite often, you know, people's backgrounds give them a different position, and this looks like it's a disagreement, but it's just the result of people's different life experiences. So if you can help people to understand each other and their different perspectives, then lots of good things are possible. I have to say that I'm not myself from an Indigenous community. I feel extremely honoured to be here on this panel. So thank you very, very much. You know, it's a real privilege to be here. I am lucky enough to have had mentors, like here in Thailand. One of my greatest teachers is Pochana Suansi. She has 30 years of experience working with Thai communities. And so I was able to learn alongside her, and I was really amazed by the potential of using social work skills as another toolkit to make, you know, basically to benefit communities, but also to create, you know, incredible experiences for visitors as well. I'm one of the founders of Thailand Community-Based Tourism Institute since 2007. And now I'm working for ITC, the International Trade Center. And ITC is a UN organization, and our mission is to help small and medium-sized enterprises to benefit from global trade. And I've been working in Myanmar with a team, which includes Pochana and also our Myanmar colleagues. And basically, we've been working in the villages where the long-neck Karen live. And, you know, long-neck Karen in Southeast Asia is a very long story. So these people, the Kayan, they had to escape from war in Myanmar, and they were actually stuck in kind of makeshift camps in Thailand. Tour operators were charging entrance fees. It became a kind of worst case scenario example of cultural tourism. So in Myanmar, we had the chance to try to work alongside the people to create just a more meaningful, more beneficial, and just a fully better experience of meeting the Kayan people. And we did this through a supply chain approach, which, you know, I find extremely challenging and interesting. So working at each step along the supply chain, from the villagers through to regional license guides, local ground handlers, destination management companies, and national tour operators, and through to the market, trying to have an intervention at each point to help people understand each other and to help these experiences move from a fully participatory process up to the market and actually be sold. And in the last 3 years, we've replicated that as a TOT, or training of trainers process. So we've got local trainers now who are able to do this. And so that's where we're at. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's very interesting to listen to all the well, so interesting and maybe intense project you're involved in, and that's great. Thank you very much. Judy, can you please share with us your what you're doing and what are the recent projects you're involved in at the moment?
Good evening from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Judy Kefagona. I am a founder of a knowledge-based organization known as Sustainable Travel and Tourism Agenda. Our idea is to empower the tourism industry with good enough knowledge so that we can all be better consumers and producers, that what they put in the market, what the tourism puts in the market, will add value to human life, to those who travel, and that those who consume it will consume it responsibly. Now, over the last before I set up STTA, I have been in the space where I have engaged with community at different levels. In my early careers in sustainable tourism, I worked more with communities that managed or owned community enterprises. And the big idea at that time was community had to own and manage. And so community-based tourism became defined as community that is owned and managed by communities. But more and more we started seeing that there was communities that were hosting tourism without owning and managing. So the definition evolved, and over time we saw it now change from community tourism, based tourism, meaning tourism that is owned, managed, hosted, or hosted by communities. In this age, in the last decade, when we're living in an era of profound awareness about the implications of our activities as human beings, the implications of individuals, the implications of businesses, the implications of governments and policies, and what it means for all of us to create places that are good enough for us to live in. With things like climate change and many other things happening today, we are living in an era of a pandemic. So with this profound awareness, another addition to the whole idea of community-based tourism emerged. It was now the idea of tourism that is acceptable. Acceptable means we had to start putting boundaries. We had to start talking about boundaries. The tourism has got boundaries. There's so far that we can go, even for the communities that are hosting tourism. There's an extent to which they should be allowed to put boundaries in tourism. And this is the whole concept of sustainability, that there's nothing like open consumption, and there's nothing like open production and open creation and open innovation. Everything now has got to be done within boundaries, because human beings have realized that if we don't do things without some controls and some boundaries, we're actually doing things that come back to limit our own existence. So in working in this particular space, in the early years, I realized that the emphasis, and even in places that I worked on, the emphasis was always that let's empower the communities so that communities can do tourism properly. There was always the criticism about community-owned tourism, or they didn't meet the market standards, and all, because tourism was about transforming what community has, not actually offering what the community have and how they want to offer it. So we put a lot of effort in those years in trying to transform communities to meet market demands, not trying to educate the traveler to know that there's certain things that can just be consumed the way they are. You don't have to consume a community product like you would consume it at Kempinski. Don't expect the Kempinski standards. Expect a community experience. When you go to Kempinski, you get the Kempinski experience. Kempinski cannot give you a community experience. And so that became my message in my organization over the last 7 years. I have had an agenda not to transform the community, but to transform the thinking of the tourism industry, to transform the thinking of the traveler, to transform the industry on how they engage with the community, that their type of engagement with the community can result in an exciting encounter for the travelers, because the community will welcome the visitors, the guests, the tourists will be treated as guests. They will not be tourists, but that depends on how tourism engages with community. So over the last 3 years, I have spent time trying to develop training and communication material to help the tourism industry understand that their type of engagement can hurt a community and bring risks to a community. At the same time, if it is done properly, everybody can thrive. The tourism businesses can thrive, the communities can thrive, and we can create great places to visit that are great places to live in. Thank you.
Very good, Judy. Thank you very much. And it's all the more pleasure to have you in this panel today, since we had planned to be together on another panel last March. We were supposed to be at the ITB for the Indigenous Tourism Seminar together, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, everything was cancelled. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Robert Taylor, can you please give us also your views, tell us more about WhyTalk and what are the recent projects you are involved in at the moment?
Sure, thanks, Aurelie. Well, I'm the CEO of WhyTalk, so I'm Nanda, which is from the Yamaji Nation in the Midwest of Australia. And WhyTalk has been working for around 20 years now in supporting Aboriginal tourism across Australia. We, as you're probably aware, we were going to have the World Indigenous Tourism Summit here in Perth in Western Australia, but due to COVID, that was also postponed, which we're looking at having that in November 2021. Hopefully by then we'll be able to have international visitors back into Australia. So we're really looking forward to holding that event as well. We've been running an Aboriginal tourism development program for the last 5 years, and it's been very successful. And it is a shame that COVID has come along, because over the last 5 years, we've created 40 new businesses, Aboriginal tourism businesses across our state, and 104 full-time jobs were created out of that. And now it's going the other way. We haven't lost too many businesses, even though our government did close our communities due to the risk on some of the elders in our communities. What we did to support them is we made sure that WhyTalk moved its staff around. We used some state government staff also to ring and contact every member that we had in our membership around WA and just talk to them to find out what they needed. Our state government put some great programs in place where they actually put up some survival grants for our businesses as well. So our Aboriginal tourism businesses could apply for $6,500 in funds to help them get through a tough time. And also then there was another grant after that, which you could claim up to $100,000 per business as well. So they've supported over 1,000 businesses across the state in tourism, which has been really helpful. And our Premier has been very strong in keeping our borders closed at the moment, even to the other states, so that we don't get any cross-contact movement in COVID. It's been quite well received in our state, but other states have been not too impressed that they can't come over to WA and we can't travel out, but it's being held at the moment, our hard borders. So our development program has been very successful, and we've also seen a lot of our businesses during COVID. We've supported them by letting them make small videos of what they're doing. So they've been out doing their normal hunting, fishing, gathering, all those sorts of things they would have done if there wasn't tourists there, and being able to survive on the normal things they would have done before, colonization even happened. So a lot of that hunting and gathering, we asked them to film, And then we made a series called Postcards in Your Backyard that we put out on social media just to keep people interested in the Aboriginal tourism businesses, and that was very successful as well. And we ran a competition where you could choose your best postcard that you liked, and then we've given out $10,000 worth of vouchers, which then gives money back into the tourism businesses. And the state government have also been running a campaign which has been called basically staying in your own backyard as well. So people haven't been able to go out to other countries or out of the state. So they've been calling them a staycation instead of a vacation. So yeah, we've had a lot of Western Australians traveling around their own state to places they've never even been before. So it's been reasonably successful over the past 2 or 3 months, even though COVID has hit pretty hard, because our northern part of Australia only has a very short season due to weather, due to wet season, monsoons, cyclones, etc. So they only got about 3 months of their season, which is pretty devastating. But they have been able to get support from our state government.
Thank you very much, Robert. That will also make the bridge to the next topic about the challenges that you are all encountering, but we will also end this introduction with Keith Henry. And Keith, welcome to the panel. We're happy to have you here. Can you please give us an introduction of what you are doing at the moment at ITAC? And if you want, you can also, I think all the recent projects you are involved at the moment, of course, are connected to what is happening due to the pandemic and this whole very special situation. So please also, you can also go on with developing all the challenges that you are living through due to the lockdown regarding community-based tourism.
Sure. Well, thanks. It's an honor to be on the panel today. My name is Keith Henry. I'm the President and CEO for the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. I'm a Métis person, one of the 3 main Indigenous peoples in Canada. There's First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. And I'm actually joining you from Vancouver, not where I'm from originally, but a Coast Salish territory with a lot of rich history with the local First Nations here in British Columbia on the west coast of Canada. But our organization, just to give a little context, we are a national organization. We support the development of Indigenous tourism across the country, and we're Indigenous owned and operated. Our board is 1 Indigenous representative from every province and territory. We're not government. We work exclusively with our, roughly 630 First Nation communities, with a number of Métis settlements, and the Inuit in the north and all their sort of local communities. And we have a very large urban Indigenous population, which we're trying to serve there, show them that tourism is a logical opportunity for their culture in many ways. So right now we have about 1,800 businesses. Some are large hotels, cultural centers, outdoor adventure, restaurants, a really wide range of small entrepreneurially owned businesses to large community owned enterprises that are quite sophisticated. And Indigenous tourism has been growing in our country for about 30 years. So our role as a national body has really been to help continue that growth through a variety of plans, tactics, and strategies. So having said that, we faced pretty challenging times. 2019 was our best year ever. Just to give everyone a sense of the size of our industry, we were about $2 billion in direct GDP. We had 40,000 people working in our businesses. And as I said, some of these businesses were quite sustainable. We had a number of businesses that were evolving because of the growth and interest in Indigenous tourism. For example, in the last 4 years, we had about 400 startup businesses that we helped incubate across the country. So these are we were seeing a tremendous growth in 2019 that up until December. So 2020 was certainly poised to be a tremendous year for us. We were growing at a rate of about 20 to 25% a year, with both domestic and international visitation growing quite rapidly. And part of that is because we've taken a really strong approach in Canada to really understand the market And as much as I would like to say the market will adjust to our Indigenous communities, we learned through a lot of trials and tribulations that we also have to adjust to what the market conditions are. We have to understand how we're packaging. We have to understand how the sales channels work. And we took a more streamlined approach on trying to work with industry. So partners like Destination Canada, you know, many of our layers of marketing organizations in Canada. And that was really, I think, quite a turning point for our industry a number of years ago. And so that's really helped us grow tremendously. Now, we've done a lot of community-based tourism work. We've created standards, we've created national manuals and guidelines. And so we've created a lot of what we call it toolkits for the communities as they start from startup. They just have concept idea, building out a thought, a process. We've got checklists, things that we just make it really simple for the local community economic development officer and leadership to think of, like, what's the actual, where do we start? And so we've created a lot of these tools on our, and it's at indigenoustourism.ca/corporate if people want to look at it. It's called the National Manual for Market Readiness and Authenticity. So we've created, and that's just one example, we've created a lot of these kind of tools to get our industry to the place we were today. So we've done that. We've done, the other thing we've tried to do is work with marketing partners about, one thing we all have in common, we all come from beautiful countries. We have lots of, probably beautiful water, maybe mountains. We have a lot of environmental assets. But what we've really been able to help the industry here in Canada understand that what makes Canada different is that Indigenous presence. It's not just Canada with RCMP officers and beavers and maple syrup and the things that our industry did really rely heavily on promoting Canada in a lot of ways internationally. So we've really been done a part of the other side of the work we've done is really help shape what's different about Canada and when we saw our marketing partners realize that we're not competitive with them, that we want to work with them to make Canada even a more attractive destination, it really turned the corner for us. So, all that to say that we've done lots of community development, whether it's, in the East Coast with Torngats and Inuit people on Northern Labrador, where this is the most remote location that anyone could find in the world. Quite honestly, I know there's a lot of remote locations, but it's several legs to get there. It's in a national park for us in Canada, where we've helped continue to support the Nunatsiavut people, and they're in the local Inuit communities develop a, sort of an outdoor adventure, really one of the last safaris in Canada right to urban centers, right? Whether that's in, I know, Oriel, you've been to Quebec and Wendake and the work that's been done there, or Haida Gwaii in British Columbia. So, I mean, the list is kind of quite, we've gone from rural, remote locations and how could we move visitors and how do we come up with a plan to support the communities to, all the way across the, I guess, spectrum. So, I know we're going to get into some of the impacts today, but I mean, it's been such an exciting, I guess, trajectory for us. We as a national body have done, we're quite proud of the work and the growth we saw in Indigenous tourism, in tourism Canada. And I will end with this for setting the context. What Canada and our layers of provincial, territorial, local, municipal marketing organizations realize that when they really put some legwork behind helping market and promote Indigenous tourism, we were outpacing every single other sector in growth. And it wasn't just because there was new consumers. What people wanted, they just weren't sure where to find local Indigenous tourism. And when we all helped to make it easier for the consumers, it really changed the landscape. And so tourism grew over 3 years. We did an assessment of this last year. Tourism grew 14% roughly across the board in Canada over those 3 years. We grew about 24%. So, and nothing really changed. The visitor volume hadn't really changed. What it was that the actual way we were marketing amongst partners was dramatically changed. So, I'll just leave it at that for my opening comments.
Thank you very much, Keith, for this presentation. Now we can go also through the challenges that you have started to mention, and in this special time that we are going through, how all of your companies, organizations are doing are using their creativity to to support the challenges that they are facing at the moment. If you want, Keith, you can go on with this, and then I will give back the floor to Anina. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks. I mean, for all of us, we know that tourism was the first hit, the hardest hit, and it will be the last to recover. In Canada, that's been very true. Our tourism sector, out of all the economic sectors, Indigenous or not, tourism felt it right away, and we're feeling it significantly right now, and it's taking longer to recover. And so, you know, we were having a record-breaking year I was just talking about. Now we've had record-breaking collapse. You know, we had about 1,800 businesses that were up and running. We estimate we're going to lose at least 700 to 800, if not more, of those businesses by November. There's just been zero revenue. Most of and the challenge we got is twofold. One, Canada relied heavily on a lot of international visitors from the US, from Japan, from China, from France, from Germany and UK. They were the largest spending visitor volumes for our businesses, if I can say it that way. Well, we know now today that for Canada, those borders are all closed. And there was the thought when COVID first started that by the fall, we might be able to start to rebuild. And that's just simply not the case with the second wave now really starting to impact Canada. So that's one thing. But on the other side, what has happened now, it took us many years to build Indigenous community positive sentiment about tourism. Now COVID, and because viruses have had a devastating impact on Indigenous communities in Canada, it has wiped out just about like hundreds of thousands of Indigenous people in this country only 100 to 150 years ago. So these are fresh thoughts in the elders' minds and in the people we're working with, and it impacts. So right now, what we have, we've done some, I guess, surveying. And about half our communities in Canada are really uncomfortable welcoming visitors back, even if they can reopen. So now we're trying to deal with how are we going to get, if I can say, Indigenous social license. So as we recover, it's not just a matter of borders reopening and people can travel again. We're going to have to really rebuild the sentiment that we can open safely, and that, you know, this is something that we need to, these are the measures we need to do that we can do this properly and appropriately. So we've created, so some of the things we've done around this. So we've created standards for COVID-19 sort of safety standards and guidelines. We've created, I guess, a procedure manual, regardless of which sector. When we've put that out to our businesses and to our communities, we're hoping as we get past this sort of continued shock of the closure, we'll get to that place. We've also been working with the government of Canada, who's been a great partner to us. We've developed a stimulus grant program. So we are helping businesses with up to $25,000 grants to sort of weather the storm of COVID-19 to help keep their doors open a little bit. It's not a huge amount of money, but it helps. So we've helped right now about $16 million in funds for our businesses to keep them afloat, as many of them afloat. We're worried that if they completely shut down, some of these just will not come back. I mean, it's just a simple fact of it. And it's taken us 30 years to get to 1,800 businesses. And so we don't want to lose 800 to 1,000 of these. So we've done the grant process. We've also been able to work with the government of Canada to extend what we have here in Canada is called the Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we were finally able to work with the government to extend wage subsidy to keep the employees of our Indigenous businesses attached to the business, even if there isn't a lot of, you know, sustainability to pay for the employees. So Canada has agreed to extend the wage subsidy till basically the spring of 2021, which is going to help keep employees from moving on to other sectors. I mean, you know, the worst thing we have in Canada, we have such a large workforce that, you know, when visitors in the future come from the US or anywhere else for that matter, when they go to an Indigenous experience, they're going to want to see an Indigenous person there. It does very little to sell Indigenous tourism when it's not Indigenous people potentially working there. And so we're trying to keep those trained employees that have been invested in millions over the years to keep them attached. So that's another, I guess, step. The third thing we're doing is we've launched a series of sort of domestic marketing activities over the summer to try and, you know, move Canadians around our country a little more effectively. We did a campaign called Escape from Home. we launched a new online platform for consumers called Destination Indigenous, and there was a whole series of tactics around that, but that did have its challenges because Canadians themselves can't even freely travel amongst province to province or territory. There's actually, travel restrictions even within our own country. So that's been a real challenge for us. But we have done the marketing side domestically, and we intend to continue that work. And I would say the last thing we're pushing on right now, we do have a recovery strategy until 2024. We do have a well thought out plan. But one of the issues that is really paramount to that recovery is that we need to help our businesses to find other financial tools, whether they're community owned or entrepreneurially owned, the banks and everyone. Canada has done a certain amount of backstopping for loans, but it's only 80%. And what's happening is whether we have various institutions, you can borrow money to refinance and just sort of weather the storm in addition to our 25,000. We're just trying to work with the banks or the government of Canada to backstop these loans for 100% because the banks they're not approving tourism. They're using those programs for other sectors because tourism is seen as too risky. And so we really got a lot of significant challenges to sustain the sector in Canada. And the impacts are real. Again, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I talked about the number of business losses. As of August, we estimate we lost 21,000 people working out of the 40,000. So it's a significant impact. And our belief is that if we don't implement the other recovery tactics that we're trying to negotiate with Canada right now for our actual recovery plan, it took 30 years to build. It's going to take maybe 1 or 2 years to destroy, and it may take another 30 to rebuild. So we got a choice in Canada that we've been saying to our partners: either sustain it and support it, or the system's going to pay one way or another. People that don't have the jobs, they go on social assistance, they go on other federally funded programs. It's a choice about how we want to position what we want to do with Indigenous tourism. So that's really the challenge we have. And right now, I just want to say that we're not seeing the light. It's taking longer because Canada's going through a very significant second wave right now. It's worse than people thought. And we had all thought the US border would open by the fall, and those none of that's happening. So it's pretty challenging times for us, and we're doing all we can to keep our businesses afloat.
Thank you very much, Keith, for your testimony on this, and we also share, your the worry that we can all have on families who are depending on those businesses to survive, and so our thought out with your people as well. Thank you very much. Anina, as the CEO of Visit Natives, and you are on the field at the moment with Indigenous people, can you share with us what kind of challenges Visit Natives team has been through during the COVID time? I don't know if Anina is here. Maybe she's disconnected. Anina, are you here? Maybe not. I will give her the floor when she comes back. Okay. So maybe Peter, can you share with us what kind of challenges you have seen and you have encountered during the lockdown, for example, and how you and your team have contributed to support local communities?
Okay, thank you very much, Aurélie. Yeah, generally, just like everywhere else, COVID is a complete disaster. It's just an unprecedented, right? Everyone's using this word, but it really is. It's just an unprecedented disaster. And back in March and April in our team, we were thinking that by this time now, we'd at least have domestic markets fully back engaged and, hopefully beginning to do regional marketing, and there would be travel bridges and travel bubbles and all these different initiatives which were being discussed. And really nothing has happened. And just as Keith was saying, we're being hit now by the second wave. In Thailand, the Thai government have been extremely strict, and they did a good job of controlling the spread of COVID. There's been huge economic consequences of that. But okay, in terms of protecting the population, they've done a really good job. In Myanmar, COVID kind of didn't appear to be taking a hold, and domestic tourism started again. And now, just in the last couple of weeks, the second wave has come and the numbers going up. So it's really, really sad. In terms of how it's affected my work, I'm generally working with remote rural communities. It's kind of a traditional CBT situation. At the end of 2019, our project was in 2 phases. So to start with, we were working in the center of Myanmar in the Kayah state, and then we replicated this project in the south of Myanmar. So we just had our 3rd season of tourism in Kayah state. More than 100 international tour operators were selling our experiences. Things were looking really, really good. 7,000 visitors, which for us in this context is fantastic numbers. And then at the end of October, we had a fam trip to our new experiences in Dawei. And these are really interesting experiences because in Kayah is a kind of classic, very, very cultural, deep green CBT experience. But in Dawei, it's down on the Andaman coast, that this natural environment's quite similar to Phuket, but this area is completely virgin. It's absolutely beautiful. So we knew that we were going to have leisure travelers there in the future. So we tried to develop more kind of leisure-based, community-based tourism experiences, such as a barefoot forest spa and a sunset beach picnic produced by the local ladies in the communities. And we had 28 tour operators on our fam trip, and it was fantastic. Everyone had a fantastic time. The sky's the limit, off we go. And everything was just blown out of the water, which was extremely sad. So what have we been doing? We've been trying to use our time as best as we possibly can. We're lucky that we used the training of trainers process during our project. So from the very beginning, we thought about, okay, how are we going to ensure sustainability? We have to ensure skill transfer. So we work with young people in the destinations. We invited young professionals to come and literally join us, whenever they wanted to, on the job in the field. And then we formalized that in the last 3 years as a systematic training of trainers process. So we have been able to do online training because TOTs are smart enough and tech savvy enough to be able to do online training. But up until 2 weeks ago, they were still able to go to the communities and then implement the TOT actually in the field. But in the last 2 weeks, they haven't been able to do that anymore. So this is a new challenge for us now. So yeah, I guess one of the big lessons learned there is that TOT was doubly useful in the end. One of the key concerns that we have is that we have this mantra in sustainable tourism about tourism for community benefits, and this is true. I mean, we do know that, of course, that tourism can create great benefits for communities, but the situation now is that the communities that we're working in, kind of in a strange way, they have a more diversified economy and they're actually more resilient to COVID than the people who are at the bottom of the tourism supply food chain. So there's quite a lot of pressure from tour guides and tour operators who have lost all their business, and understandably they're just desperate to get tourism running again, to initiate tours back to the communities, and they're using the language of sustainable tourism, like we have to help to create benefits for the local communities. And I think there is some sincerity there, but it's also motivated by their own kind of desperation. And so we have a similar situation to what Robert was talking about, where many villages actually don't want to open yet. Some do and some don't. That's the reality of the situation. So we've also been working on tools. We have COVID safety guidelines for community visits, which was just finished last week, and that will be available on our Facebook, Myanmar Inclusive Tourism Project Facebook, to share as well. And we have trainings planned, again, through TOT, through training of trainers for our field team to implement these guidelines. And we're also going to do training for local ground handlers and regional tour guides and DMCs in Yangon. But everything really depends on people being able to go back to the villages, even as trainers, if not tourists. So that's where we're at now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your testimony on the situation. Anina has come back, so I will be able to give you the floor, Anina, to share with us what are actually the challenges that you've been through with Visit Natives in those special times with, I mean, regarding the lockdown and the COVID situation, and how you and your partners have contributed to support local communities? Yes, so we are eager to hear you about those points.
Okay, thank you. My introduction was very short, so I would like to tell you a little bit about our traveling concept. So we are very much a grassroots level travel or tour operator, and we work in 2 countries with few indigenous communities. And I'm the only non-indigenous worker, and the idea to found Visit Natives was because I studied African studies and I did my one year field research among the Maasai, and it changed my life. And when I came back, I realized, like, why can't we have traveling experiences that it's so immersive and have positive impact? So that was the idea to create Visit Natives, to create something very, very much grassroots level, like staying with native families. So that is our concept. And we work in Norway with Sami reindeer herders. And even Tanzania and Norway are very different countries. So in Norway, it's a wealthy country, but then indigenous people are facing similar challenges, and there are not many more full-time reindeer herders. So our aim in Norway is to help the reindeer herders to be full-time reindeer herders. So, and in Tanzania instead, we look for very, very remote locations, and we work with families, with women who are widows or girls who are school dropouts. We really want to have a positive impact on those remote villages. So the challenges were before pandemic we have beautiful locations, but we work in very remote places where are no toilets. And, you know, anyway, this is tourism, so we need to have some kind of quality. And we've been working very much because all our tours are managed and run and developed by the indigenous people. So we started very well, and our concept was working, and we have like different indigenous communities in Tanzania and in Norway, but then came the pandemic. So what it happens to us, of course, we didn't have any tours until now. You know, Tanzania is welcoming visitors, but it comes very slowly. So we will have to put the COVID guidelines. But what I see in practice, what are the challenges, is that we can have beautiful guidelines, but when we go, and this is also maybe it's not going to change fast. COVID will last for many, I don't know until when. So that we have to think for long term. And we have the guidelines, but when you're on the field, you go community-based tourism is about being with the people. We bring travelers to stay with the families. We want to cook together. We want to sit on the campfire. We want to feel the connection. We want to have immersive experience. And it means that wearing a mask, social distancing, this is very challenging. And we need to find a way to create experiences that we can do safely and still have the immersive experience. So I hope that we can find a way that these guidelines will not only be in a paper, because also it said like COVID is spread among families. And we are aware when we go to supermarket, we wear the mask and we are very careful with our hands. But when we are home with the people we care, we forget it. And this is also happening. I'm afraid that community-based tourism, we want to be in the village. You spend 1 week in a village, you get to know the people. So we need to make sure that it's safe. It's safe for the host and it's safe for the traveler. So I think this is something we have to think in the long term, how we can make this happening, because it's all about connecting with the people. But what we did for our business recently is we created like online courses. So we have experiences that are based on indigenous wisdom or traditional, all these traditional things that we, customs, rituals, and we made some online courses, and then the traveler can make the course online. It's a different product, but we also found some market to sell the products for schools, universities. You know, it can be also because a training material that the indigenous people are giving their aspects about nature conversation, so it can be also very educative material. And then we did some online performances. So the indigenous people, it's only about 1 hour, because, you know, traveling and watching, I personally don't like much online experiences, because you work all day with the computer, and it's not the same relaxing experience to maybe to have a long online course. But 1 hour is very beautiful. You can see the dancing, you can feel the thing when you kind of travel. So this was, we did during the lockdown. We had these online performances, and they were very successful. And they are also like, the price is not high. So people who maybe would not travel with us bought the experience. And this was very important for our Tanzanian communities, because I felt very bad. We were creating many communities, worked very hard, and they were expecting to host the travelers, and then gave the COVID. And we told them that we are having these travelers, and then we will need to cancel. And there was, I mean, they are facing many issues like hunger and lack of basic needs. So with this help of these online performances, we bought health insurance for over 100 families in Tanzania. And I think it was very, very important to show them that we didn't abandon them, even we didn't bring the travelers there. And we also delivered food aid for the families most in need. So this is what we have done so far. And as I told, we are very, very grassroots level. So we work with the families, and now we are looking forward to how we can continue to do this safely. And I think, as I said earlier, that this is maybe, we say that when the pandemic is over, the sustainable tourism will rise and will change the world. But it's also, we have to think how to do it in hand with these COVID guidelines. So that's something that I'm looking forward also to discuss with others, how we can do this together.
Absolutely, Janina, thank you very much. Just to give a short input from my own experience as founder of Native Immersion. Visit Natives and Native Immersion have started a collaboration together in the idea to create a kind of traveler toolkit, a traveler kit that is also giving a very deep service to travelers, so that they get the full support to understand and get prepared to the indigenous experiences before they go to indigenous communities, because we have to give a lot of energy into education, most of all in places where indigenous people are, it's not the most vulnerable, but are the most I mean, maybe sometimes not that close to the Western world. And it's important also to give room for the people to be able to express when they have lived a cultural shock, living an immersive experience, a deep immersive experience with indigenous people, so that they can understand and then translate their experience into something they can do with getting more committed to their own land when they get back home. And I think that the experience with indigenous people is that what makes it so powerful through the community-based tourism. It's to, as we also mentioned this before, we're not tourists anymore. We are like in a visitor and host relationship, and this is what makes it so unbelievable. And well, I wanted to give this input to our project together, because and during the pandemic, what we try to do also is to give the opportunity to keep contact with indigenous people in communities, and try to also build a kind of business model through online connection to transform indigenous operators as educators of travelers. And so that's why we have tried to explore ideas of offering online courses, online experiences with indigenous people that will be a step or preparation before they meet in person when the situation with the pandemic is over, hopefully. So now I would like to listen to Judy about the challenges you have encountered and how you have contributed to support the local communities. Yes, so Judy, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. When I introduced myself, I did not mention that I chair 2 boards of community organizations that work in conservation and tourism based out of Masai Mara. So I chair a community wildlife conservation area, which is a tourism enterprise owned by the community and co-managed by tourism investors. I equally chair a board of our community empowerment organization that works out of Masai Mara in Kenya, which is a tourism destination. But this other organization looks at the gaps between tourism and community needs and tries to work with tourism to identify the right areas of intervention where tourism can make meaningful contribution to the lives of the community. So it's very interesting to sit in an organization that does tourism and chair it, and another one is trying to provide the link and in the spaces where tourism has not been effective, or just bringing to the awareness of tourism that this is some of the interventions you can engage in this community that will bring meaningful transformation of lives in this area. So I'll start with an overview of impact of COVID on community tourism in general in Kenya. Then I will give specific examples of how the community conservation area where I sit as the chair, as we have some of the things that we have done to help the community during this time. Now, I think as a country, one of the lessons that we have learned during this time is that many of community-based enterprises are very small enterprises and medium or small to medium enterprises. Only a small percentage have reached maturity in terms of business development and are standing alone as significantly large enterprises. And the community conservancy that I share is actually a significantly large limited company, which operates with everything, the legal structures and the systems, and it's huge, and it has a very big board, a very diverse board, which means it can compete with many, what I will call many big employers in the country today. Yet I have also engaged with very small, very small community-based tourism enterprises. Some are owned at family level, some are just at village level, some slightly extend outside of the village, but a large percentage of them that are community owned and community managed are very small or small enterprises. Now, most of these enterprises fall within, in our country, they fall between the category of businesses that are called informal. Informal, which means that they try their best, but they're not able to comply with all regulatory requirements. They do the basic, they get the license to operate tourism, and they can go as far as getting a business name, so they have a license and they can open a bank account. And they are allowed, to a certain extent, they can enter into a transactional deal with another operator. But most of them are not even able to do that because they don't have the tax registration system. They're not registered with the tax authorities because they are not able in their small businesses to keep their books properly and make returns, annual returns to the tax authority. So they remain very informal, which hinders them from growing because they're unable to enter into partnership, even with tour operators to sign contractual deals for promotion. Becomes a problem because the tour operator says, I want to see your value added tax certificate. I want to see your exemption certificate. I want to see your certificate of confirmation that you are tax compliant, so that when I do business with you, I can be able to claim back my VAT, what we call it here, value added tax. So because of those limitations, you find that most of the CBTEs are in that category of informal businesses, and they stay in that place for a long time. So the category of CBTEs that are in the informal businesses were hard hit by this pandemic. Why am I saying they were hard hit and doubly hit? Because those ones that are in the formal bracket were able to qualify for government economic stimulus packages. And the conservancy, where the community conservancy where I sit as a board chair, is a recipient of the government economic stimulus packages. But many thousands more and hundreds of thousands, which might go out of business, could not access this because they needed this documentation. Some of them are not even in the main register of the tourism authority as qualified tourism businesses. So it is even difficult to tell how much they have lost because they are not even in the database in the first place. And yet they make the majority of the experiences. Like all of you have mentioned, everybody loves tourism. The conservancy that I'm talking about, the community conserved area where I sit, is totally dependent on tourism. But what we did, which has kept the community going, what we did when we were designing this enterprise together with the community, we allowed for the continuation of the local livelihood, which is pastoralism. So this area was defined as a conservation area. Traditionally in Kenya, conservation areas do not allow for mixed use of land. But in this conservation area, we designed a model that allowed for mixed use of land, a compatible use with wildlife. So we found out that research had shown that wildlife and pastoralism go hand in hand, that wildlife and livestock can use the same spaces, provided the grazing is managed so that they don't get too close to each other at different times to be able to pass diseases, especially from the wildebeest to the cows. It was possible for them to coexist. So when tourism collapsed, the community still had pastoralism, and they were still able to take their livestock to the market. And so households, whereas their incomes went down, they could still depend on their livestock. They could still take their kids to school. They could still meet their day-to-day needs. So the model at the beginning had built in some resilience by continuing, by not cutting off local livelihoods, but integrating local livelihoods into the tourism conservation model. So this has cushioned the community conservation area that I work with, and what we've been able to receive apart from the government stimulus fund has also been a little bit of support from other conservation organizations like Conservation International, like USAID has now come in and supported every community conserved area that works on the same model, where communities still own the land. So in this model, communities still own the land. Community livelihoods have been maintained and supported. They still go on. They live alongside the conservation areas. They have not been evicted. They have just opened. They are not putting fences. They have opened their land so that wildlife can move into the areas that are secluded, but they have not fenced off. So their lifestyles have continued, their livelihoods have continued. Wildlife and tourism has not taken over. Land still belongs to them. Tourism is only leasing these places. We did not allow for any tourism to buy and take over anything that was community asset. So the model built in resilience that allowed local livelihoods to continue. So tourism was just another economic vehicle for the community. It did not take over community lives. So the resilience that was built there has kept some of this community, the one that I work with where I sit in the board, it has kept us going for a little bit. Now, within that model, or build some what I call social security measures. Other than the livelihoods and retention of land and local livelihoods, there was monies that was supposed to be set aside out of tourism business that will act like some cushion fund that can carry forward when tourism, when anything happens to tourism, there can be some money that the community can fall back to for a given period of time. This money has been able to help with support of payment of salaries for those who are working as rangers in these places. Now other organizations have come in to support, to pay for the rangers. So nobody working in the community conservancies lost their job during this time. The people working in the tourism lodges within the conservation areas lost their jobs. But the communities working directly in the conservation area as community rangers, not one of them lost their job. There has been a program to support them. So we've also learned another lesson, that you can actually build resilience through the design of tourism when working with communities to avoid over-dependence on one source of income for the community and build alternative livelihoods that are compatible with tourism in a certain area can be very, very beneficial to community. So these are some of the lessons that we have learned during this time. So what other things have we been doing to support additional things? Now I shift back to the organization that I run, which is called the STTA. At STTA, we have been trying to build more awareness on how to work with communities to build resilience, using examples of models that have worked, but also trying to caution. I think one of us has spoken about sometimes you don't know where to draw the line, whether tourism is using communities during this time or is actually supporting them. And there's this thing that we've seen a lot from emerging even stronger since the pandemic was announced, what we call social marketing, that a lot of businesses have been out here saying that, no, if you don't come, the communities will be poorer. If you don't cancel, postpone, communities will be poorer. But they're saying these things, and some of them have even gone ahead to do crowdfunding from their clients without even talking to the communities that they're raising funds for. And this is when tourism starts to, when we start talking about ethical marketing and ethical ways of doing business. And we have been in the forefront of fighting in this space and saying, be ethical, do not use communities during this time. There are other ways that you can engage to support community-based tourism at this particular time. But when you go and do crowdfunding to pay for your own expenses because you want to support your company to stay afloat and you're using the name of the company, this is what we call social marketing, and it's actually an abuse of communities. So we've also been at that place of trying to fight for the rights of the community, to defend their dignity and what they stand for by ensuring that they are not misused at this particular time by certain businesses to just raise money for their own interests. Yes, so I've been on both sides of the coin trying to work with community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. That was very interesting to see that you've been through also all this kind of analysis to see what kind of tools we need also to support indigenous and community-based tourism in a more ethical way. Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Robert. Maybe because now, regarding the time that we have left, I will ask you just to maybe shorten it to 3 minutes, each of you. You can share what are the main lessons learned according to your perspectives and your reality in community-based tourism, and maybe end up with also your vision of CBD in the post-COVID-19 time, we hope. Like, what will be, according to you, the new challenges, the new strategies and commitment you would like to getting to shape a new relationship with community-based tourism in your land. So Robert, I give it to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and keep it short because I've got to echo pretty much what a lot of people are saying anyway. We've done a lot of things that Judy was mentioned as well. We have put dual use in some of our pastoralisation. So we've got camping with custodian sites where people can go and camp on Aboriginal communities, but they can also run their cattle stations at the same time. Our government did also do something similar to Canada. They put JobKeeper in to keep businesses running, to keep staff on board, and also Job Seeker, which was basically to help people that were out of work to have a little bit more income than they would normally if they weren't working. And part of that Job Seeker was to keep training going. So they would get training as part of that paid training, which was helpful for them as well. I guess the toughest thing community tourism is that for us is that our communities are vulnerable, that we are only 3% of the population of Australia due to colonisation. You know, there was a lot of stolen generation, Aboriginal people taken away from their families and children, and you know, through disease from colonisation. Again, there's a lot of diabetes, a lot of heart issues and things like that. So the government did do the right thing, I think, in closing our communities. And again, as echoing what Keith said, it'll be a long time before communities are happy to bring people, tourists and visitors back into their communities. Some of them that are running tourism businesses are small to medium as well, so they're not as hard hit. Our regions at the moment are very, very full because we've got a lot of people travelling out and the government have been really, and so have we been focusing on domestic marketing. The tough thing at the moment, though, is the build coming back. It's going to be very tough because our airlines at the moment are in devastation. A lot of them aren't travelling across, let alone international, even between our own states. So I know that some of the bigger airlines in Australia have put off more than half of their staff. Some of them are in debt of $9 billion plus. Our cruise industry is the same. It's all the cruise ships are being dismantled. It's going to be very tough for the cruise industry to come back with some of the things that happened during this COVID period as well. But I guess for the future, all we can do is, again, use our COVID-19 support that we've been put in place. We did have a lot of COVID training for reopening of places. But I think at the moment, our regions are okay, but our city hotels are all closed. They're just not coping at all, and it'll be very difficult for a lot of them to reopen. A lot of them were COVID hotels, so they transferred across just to keep open, to keep money flowing in the doors. They had people in hotels that were coming in from other places so they could quarantine, but then it was a bigger ask for them to reopen. So at the moment, our city in Perth and in other states are very hard hit as well. But for the future, again, look, all we can do is try and, you know, I don't think having virtual tours, even though we've had that try, I don't think it's as good because as I think Anina hit it on the head, it is about the experience and, you know, being with people, being with the people, not watching them on a screen. It's an immersive experience, and I think that's important. So I think we've just got to push our way through the pandemic. Aboriginal people in Australia are very resilient in themselves, as well as all around the world. So I think we'll come through. It'll just be a different world when we do. Keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Absolutely, we are living very special times, and I think resilience is the real, I mean, the main topic that we are talking about at the moment, and trying to find a way to have all communities resilient, and maybe find new ways also to do tourism. As Judy said, diversity is very important, and maybe we also have realized how dependent our systems are on tourism, and maybe we can work on it to invent a more diverse system that will support sustainability, but also protect communities from being hit by another wave or of another pandemic, maybe in the future, or any other challenge, maybe linked to climate change. So thank you very much, Robert. I give the floor to you, Anina. Sorry, I missed Keith. My apologies.
Oh, You can go to Anina, that's fine.
Okay, as you like.
Ladies first.
Okay.
You're on mute.
I don't. Anina. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So what I just would like to say shortly is that what I have learned and what we have learned on this indigenous sustainable tourism business is that we started this that we wanted to have impact on the local community, and it's true. Like we gather the women in the groups and ask what they need and what kind of issues we could solve with indigenous tourism. But the other thing we have that is that I have learned is that this kind of tourism have also impact on the traveler. So when the traveler goes to the place and when we educate the traveler, as Aurelia mentioned with the traveler toolkit, that the experience starts even before traveling. And then the traveler go to the place and experience something that is very immersive, is very, very authentic and deep, and build connections with the people and with the indigenous communities. You always connect with nature. So it might change your way you think about consuming, about climate change. It raises awareness. So we have like a double impact on the both ways. So I think that is the good thing that the community-based tourism can have. That was shortly.
Thank you very much, Anina. Keith, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think the things I would say we've learned in Canada is that similar to what people have just said, where Nina or Robert or others, I mean, it really is around ensuring that as you develop a community through tourism, that there really is what we call in Canada more of a destination plan that a lot of the non-Indigenous tourism sector uses. It does us no good to build a one-off business in a local community. We've taken the approach of a holistic planning with our communities. There needs to be accommodations, transportation, food services. We need to take care, because visitors aren't going to, go far off out of their way to go visit something that may be one experience without other services in and around it. So what I'm saying is that one of the lessons we've learned, that it really needs to be a much more comprehensive approach to how communities are developing. Once you have social license in the Indigenous community, what is the overall strategy and plan? It really shouldn't be a one-off. The entrepreneurs, the Indigenous entrepreneurs will feed into that, and they will grow their businesses organically, but we do need more of a destination management plan. And we see that in the non-Indigenous tourism sector across the world, but we don't see enough of that specifically, what I believe anyways, and here in Canada, where we see it just needs to be one thing. The second is there's not enough research. We're all talking about a specific type of customer. We all understand that. But a lot of our communities, the leadership, the people, that they don't really understand what we're going after, because it is more, there are those customers, there's other customers. What is the overall landscape of the potential of visitors coming to their community? What are the services? So there needs to be more Indigenous specific tourism work. And we do a lot of that in Canada and I can tell you all, until ITAC was doing that, and as leading that research, it wasn't being done. Like the mainstream tourism sector only does their research based on flight entries, hotel overnight stays, and basic market volumes through the airports. I mean, so these are the things that we have to get. We got to get a layer of Indigenous understanding around the research and the customer base and why we would do this. Because then the third point, if it isn't market driven and consumer demanded, then all we're doing is creating a bunch of white elephants. And in Canada, that is something we don't support. We don't support building a business for the sake of building. Now, if we're going to do it just to share culture, we have lots of cultural centers, but all of our communities have evolved in tourism for a lot of years. They want to make sure that if they get more involved in Indigenous tourism, that they're not left paying for a bunch of infrastructure that can't pay for itself. So that is a really important piece. So it's the three elements for me. And of course, I guess I should ask the fourth. It needs to be authentic. I mean, and by authentic, we don't mean it's stuck in time, or that we're, from 300 years ago, people are running around and all they're doing is wearing. Like, Indigenous people evolved, and what was contemporary 300 years ago was not seen as, maybe as authentic at that time for the older generation at that time. What we're trying to get people to understand is Indigenous people evolve. We adjust with the climate, we adjust with the times, but we are having a serious identity issue in the tourism space, because a lot of visitors still think if you come to Canada and see an Indigenous community, you're going to see someone get, you know, with some regalia ride across the field on a horseback. And that's not, like, we got to stop feeding the stereotypes. We've got to help people understand that what's historical, what is traditional, and what is contemporary, because we got a lot of young up and coming Indigenous artists that are expressing themselves in a lot of different ways. So those are the lessons I would say are really important to us here in Canada.
Thank you very much, Keith. This is an excellent point that you mentioned, and it's very important. Of course, the Indigenous word is made of a lot of diversity, and we have to also remember this, and that the community-based tourism in Indigenous communities can be done in many different ways, but connected to the reality of people. And of course, the contemporary reality is also part of it. And I think that the connection between the tradition and the contemporary time are the most interesting interaction that we can have all together. Also remembering of human roots from over the world, and that's also important to see how Indigenous people can also bring new perspective in the modern world. Thank you very much. We have now Peter. Please give us your views and your last word about the way and your vision about community-based tourism in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much, Aurélie. Okay, it's interesting because when I was thinking about this question, I actually thought about this question of authenticity. Yeah, one thing which COVID does do really, really nicely is it shows very clearly that all of us are living in 2020. And yes, we have different cultures and societies and ways of life and so on, but there isn't anybody that's living back in time, which is such a huge expectation of so many visitors. And so you've got this idea of authenticity, which is basically like a fairy tale cocktail of expectations, which doesn't have any relevance, you know, often to people's real lives. And it's also, you know, it's not good for the communities because it's a burden of expectations, which is often placed on the communities, and the tourists are disappointed with something that the communities themselves can't offer, you know, rather than their actual product and service and experience. And maybe in a way, COVID is an opportunity for us to explore that a bit. You know, I'm working, as I said, in the long neck Cayenne communities, and now the long neck ladies are wearing face masks. You know, it's such a fantastic sort of shock. You know, but I mean, or it will be when the tourists come, and it's an opportunity to talk about these ideas, and maybe to stop talking about authenticity and just talk more about respect, connection, experience. Judy used the word encounter. You know, I think that these words create lower expectations. That they don't try to, you know, entice us with some vision of a bucolic past. So yeah, you know, maybe this is the opportunity of COVID to show everybody, right, we're all in this together. Actually, let's not talk about authenticity anymore. Let's talk about respect, connection, experience, and encounter. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all of you, and the topic of Indigenous and community-based tourism is so diverse and so interesting to explore because of all the wealth and diversity that it represents, and something that emerged from the situation at the moment with the kind of collapse of tourism and maybe the projection of what could be the future of tourism is seems to be really connected to how are we going to do tourism in the future, and how are we going to be more connected to communities around the world and our own communities also, and the pandemic has also taught us to re-explore our own communities since we were forced also to stay in our very close area, and that gave us the opportunity also to connect better with our neighbors and to reconnect with our own ancestry and the stories of our own families. And I think that for the future, that might be also the step to a new paradigm in tourism, more connected to the cultural wealth of all communities around the world, including people who also are part of I would say the colonialist countries, also reconnecting to their own roots and be able to share those stories also with indigenous and local communities, because this is what makes us unique as human people. And the more maybe conscious ways in doing tourism in the future, and the importance of imagining new models more committed to support local people at native immersion. We are working on the concept of guardians of the earth, to talk about indigenous people and the role, the main role indigenous people have around the world, because they are located in strategic places. They are participating to the balance of the climate. They are protecting biodiversity around the world. And how can we connect travel to this, I would say, important mission that indigenous and local communities have to make a more sustainable world for the next generations. And can we also involve the traveler into a more into a travel that is connected to the protection of the planet in the future through the connection with indigenous and local communities? That may be a topic for the next time, but thank you very much to all of you. We have like 2 minutes left, so it's time for Pablo to take over. Thank you very much for being here with us and sharing your experience and your knowledge on community-based tourism. It was a pleasure to moderate this panel, and I wish you all a great day or a great night, and hopefully we will meet in person again, my friends. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot of you. It was very interesting to hear your views, and I think, yeah, I share with you that this is a good time for education and for raising awareness and for building the future with the communities more in the center. I think we in the modern world need their wisdom. So I think it's time to build community around this and put those communities in the center. And well, thank you very much, all of you. From some of you is the starting of the day, from some of you is the ending of the day. So we really appreciate that all of you have found the time to share this panel, and we look forward to meet you also in person sometime. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.